Hello，你好，欢迎回来。Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on December 23rd, 2020. By the time most of you view this video, it will be December 24th, which means it's yours truly's birthday. Yay! Happy birthday to me. Turning 39 this year. Uh, I don't know how I feel about it, but hey, anyway, in this year where so many people did not make it through, I think being able to see my own birthday is a blessing. The last four Wisdom Wednesday episodes, we have talked about the four of the five Chinese animal deities, what amount to paganism in Chinese religion. The five animal deities that often hover at the edges of Taoism and Buddhism, neither Taoist or Buddhist, but part of both religion and their folklores nonetheless. For the most part, these animals are worshipped because how woven into people's life they are, how they are intermingled with the lives of Chinese farmers and hunters and ranchers. We have so far covered the fox, the Siberian weasel, the hedgehog, and the snake. Today we're going to look at the last of the five. This last one is called Hui Xian. Hui Xian. That's Hwae and Shian. Hui Xian. Roughly translated as the black or gray god, the black or gray immortal. In some southern Chinese provinces, the Hui Xian, the black deity, the black immortal, is portrayed as a wolf. But that is not the original design. Throughout history, the black immortal, the last of the five, that makes it sound like some kind of Power Ranger or Captain Planet and the Planeteers, the last of the five. Uh, the the Hui Xian has always been portrayed as none other than the rat. Of course, some people say, well, how can a rat, even something like a rat, can become immortal? That's crazy. Well, when you really think about it, it's not so crazy. Scientifically, we know that rats are extremely intelligent, and the rat was smart enough to win the great race. It was able to become the first place in the great race that created the Chinese zodiac. So the rat has always held a rather high station, high place of import in Chinese people's heart. Incidentally, the rat in Mandarin is called 老鼠, Laoshu, 老鼠, 老鼠. Speaking of how intelligent rats are, it's no joke. I mean, we hear about it, we read it in research, but my father has actually witnessed it in his own home. A few years ago, my dad realized that they were having rats problem in their house. So he went and bought a whole bunch of uh, rat catcher, or I don't know what to call those in English. Um, they are big, heavy boards with super glue or some kind of really strong glue on it. So you put a candy in the center, and if the rat walk over to get candy, the rat gets stuck, and then when you get up, you can drown it or dispose of it somehow, throw it in the fireplace or whatever. So my dad bought a whole bunch of these, and he said it worked for the first few days. They caught quite a few rats, and then it wasn't working anymore, and he wasn't sure why. One night, my father was laying back in his favorite easy chair, and he heard some noise coming from his trash can, and he cracked open one eye and looked down, and he saw a rat carrying some shredded newspaper over to one of these boards, and the rat was able to cover the glue with the newspaper, and then walked on top of the newspaper, get the candy, and get out of there safely. That's how intelligent rats are. True story. I didn't even make this one up. Now, if a true story is too mundane for you, I do have a story about the rat deity. It's actually a very popular Chinese folklore called the story of the Old Man of the East. The story goes that long, long time ago and far, far away, there was a remote village in northeastern China. In this village, there was this old woman who had suffered really bad misfortune in her life. Her husband died and her kids also passed away, leaving her uh, alone, and then she became mostly blind. She could see a little bit, but she was, let's say, visually impaired. She could barely see what she was doing, and she could barely see where she was going. So she lived in a rundown shack on the edge of the village, and she supported herself by doing the odd jobs like sewing and patching up people's clothes. But for the most part, she only managed to survive on what little food she could beg from her neighbors and other villagers. This old woman lived a really, really difficult life. One day, she had a dream. In her dream, there was a voice that said, "Hey, hey, I noticed that you are having a hard time, and me and my children, we have been benefiting from you and your family since you first moved here. We are old friends, so I'm going to help you out. Come outside, and I brought something for you." When she woke up, she opened the door, and there was a little bundle, a little sack outside. Inside this sack was some old clothes, a few little bits of copper coins, some old and nearly inedible food. It was not much, but it was something. And from that day on, periodically she would have a dream, and she would hear this voice to say, "Hey, I brought you something again. Go look outside." And next day she would come outside and find a sack filled with stuff, but it's mostly junk, mostly what other people would just throw away anyway. But to her, any little bit helped. She was able to save up these little bits of copper, silver, these little bits of coin. She was able to save them up to start getting 3 square meals a day, and still, it was still a hard life, but it did improve the quality of her life quite a bit. Finally, one day when she heard a voice in her dream saying that, "Hey, I brought you something again," she spoke up. She said, I don't know who you are, but you have done so much for me, and I really wish to be able to see you and say thank you." And in her dream, there was a puff of smoke, and out of this puff of smoke walked a very kindly looking old man dressed in a black robe. She asked this old man, "You must be a god. You must be one of the immortals. Who are you? How can I thank you? How can I keep you in my prayer? How can I remember to worship you?" This old man said, "I cannot tell you who I am because I think you would uh, be scared or you wouldn't want to have anything to do with me anymore. So just call me the old man of the East. You can say that I'm kind of a demigod. And I understand that what I've been bringing you is not much. But you gotta understand that I get them from other people. And I can only take what they're throwing away. Because if I start taking things that they will notice, then it may be bad for you. They may find these things here. They may notice that you are getting a little bit more comfortable, and they may blame you. I do not want any bad thing to happen to you. I don't want any bad thing to happen to myself either. So I'm sorry that I can't do better." The old woman said, "Well, what you have done is already good enough. It's great. I'm just happy that someone cares enough to help me out." From that night forward, the old man of the East, appeared in her dream more and more often. He didn't always have gifts, but he always would sit around, chat with her, talk with her, because, you know, sometimes senior citizens, elderly people, they don't necessarily need the material good. Sometimes all they need, all they want, is someone to sit down and ask if they're okay, and someone who care and sit down and talk to them or let them talk about the good old days. Suffice to say, the old man of the East and the old woman became a very good friend, and he still occasionally brought gifts. Still, there were mostly things that other people uh, were throwing away anyway. However, maybe the old man of the East wanted to impress his new friend too much. Or maybe one of these people, one of the villagers, saw something suspicious. No matter what the cause was, eventually the villagers started to be suspicious, started to pay attention to their garbage, and started to notice things going missing in the middle of the night. The little bit of food they would throw out on the trash pile would mysteriously disappear, and the little bit of clothes they would throw out would mysteriously disappear. So the villagers started to wonder what's going on. And eventually, the old woman's neighbor said, "Well, I don't know if this is related, but the old grandmother next door, we noticed that she's been doing a little bit better. She seemed to be wearing more new clothes, and she's been buying more food. So maybe she has something to do with this." So the villagers came knocking on her door, asking her what's going on. The old woman not thinking very clearly, told the villager, because I'm blessed by a god, because the old man of the east has been helping me. That freaked out the villagers because they suspected that there was a immortal, supernatural thing that's going around stealing their stuff. So the villagers went and sought out that generation's Master John Tianxi. For those of you who remember, or those of you who don't remember, we mentioned Master John before. He is Chinese people's first uh, full-time professional demon slayer ghost hunter. Every generation, every 100 years or so, there will be a new Master John to pass down the tradition. And that every Master John is blessed with incredible powers to deal with supernatural beings, demons, ghosts, demigods, spirits, zombies, skeletons, witches, all that stuff. So the villagers went and consulted with that generation's Master John. Master John gave them a, a drawing, a special word, a piece of paper, a piece of parchment with a magical room on it. And he said, go to where you think this supernatural pest is and put this word on the wall. And the god of thunder will send down thunder and lightning to deal with whatever is plaguing you guys. Now, this is the part of the story where I must say Master John did kind of bungle the job because the post of a demon slayer, a ghost hunter like Master John, was supposed to be just. He was not supposed to harm good spirits. But in this case, he did not have time. He did not take the time to investigate. He just listened to what the villagers were telling him. There's something supernatural stealing our stuff. So he gave them this magic to deal with the deity. He kind of bungled. He kind of dropped the ball here. But back to the story. The villager went back and went to the old woman, asking her to put this ward in her house. Of course, the old woman refused. She said the old man of the East didn't do any harm to anybody. He's my best friend. He helped me out. He's only taking things that you guys don't want anymore. Why are you guys trying to hurt my friend? I'm not going to let you. A few nights later, the old woman was sound asleep when one of the villagers creeped into her house and stuck the ward on her wall and left. That night, the old man of the East came to her dream. This old man in black robe, this time looking very sad, very scared. He said, I'm here to tell you that this is going to be the last time that we meet. I'm sorry that it come to this, but I hope that you will live the rest of your life in relatively peace and quiet and happiness. I won't be able to help you anymore. The old lady said, why? I told those guys I don't want the ward. I told those guys to go away. The old man of the East just shook his head, looked really sad, and walked away. Before the sun rose the next morning, suddenly there was a peal of thunder and lightning struck the old woman's little shack. It did not kill the old woman, but it did burn down almost half of her little rundown shack, destroyed half of her possessions, And in the spot where the lightning struck, there was a big hole in the ground right beside the old woman's bed. When the villagers came to investigate, they found that the floorboard underneath her bed had been hollowed out, and there was a destroyed rat's nest with hundreds of dead, small, medium, large rats in there. In the middle of them was a gigantic black rat that had been struck dead center by the lightning and burned to a crisp. So unfortunately, this giant rat, who was on his way to become immortal, whose only crime was trying to pay back and try to help out an old lady, unfortunately, because of Master John didn't investigate the case properly, uh, the rat and his entire brood got killed. It's a sad story, but stories like this kind of make us wonder just what's going on in ancient Chinese society, that people seem to have a soft spot for something that we find so repulsive, such as a rat. Why is it that a creature like a rat could have such an honor to be the first place in the great race, one of the five immortals, and even when they made up stories regarding the rat spirit, it's usually stories of relative kindness and gentleness, rather than one of plague and disease, as we would expect, going off of our impression of these little animals. Thank you for checking out today's Wisdom Wednesday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, have a good night.